Yeah, got another one wanting to come in. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started from here. Hey, welcome everybody for coming. Welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. I hope your summer's going well so far. Today's topic's more AI prompts to improve your photography. I did this back in June, and I'll go over those prompts. If you missed the June one, I'll go over those prompts again and just give you an overall idea of what was there. And someone's got their mic turned on. If you don't mind muting that, check your mics and mute it. Uh, anyway, I'll go back over those prompts I shared with you back in June, but really a popular webinar. I had a lot of feedback from that after the fact. A lot of people emailing me and thanking me for doing that one. And so as I was trying to put together this month's topic, I thought, well, why not do a few more and maybe we can show how AI can be a wonderful tool to help improve your photography. As always, if you don't know me, my name is Russell Graves. I'm coming to you live from Hackberry Farm, Dodge City, Texas. I always give a weather update, and so today's weather update, most of the time the weather here is lovely. Today it feels like being on the surface of the sun. I think the high today is supposed to be actual temperature, not feels like temperature, but actual temperature about 106 or 107 degrees. I looked at the weather this morning. It's supposed to be that way all the way through the end of the month, end of September, which is going to be miserable. But luckily, I'm going to be gone on another workshop here pretty soon to a cooler location. So I'll get to skip a little bit of the heat. But Lana, the thing that bothers me the most is it's this hot and we're less than 2 weeks away from pumpkin spice season. The official start of pumpkin spice season is upon us and no one's talking about it because it's so dadgum hot around here. You know what I'm talking about because you live fairly close to me. But anyway, with that said, more AI prompts to improve your photography. This is going to be a good one. Again, if you have any questions as we go through, uh, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm wearing even though I've got my one cowboy hat on here, I'm wearing many hats because I'm having to run the presentation. All of this is just on one screen. I've got to switch back and forth from this to my AI prompt because I'm going to show you some live demonstrations on some of these prompts. Uh, and and I can't see, when I have to when I
Recording in progress.
when I put this when I put this presentation up on the screen, I can't see the chat. So someone that just joined, if you don't mind, check your audio and make sure uh you're on mute because I'm getting some feedback on my end. Okay. All right. I think we got that taken care of. Thank you for that. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Oh, one more reminder. If you sign up for the next webinar about traveling to Africa, that's going to take place right after this one. If you sign up for that webinar, just a reminder, it's a completely different link. So check your email for that. I will be, hey, Glenn, if you don't
Yeah,
mind, can you pause can you turn your audio off?
yeah, I'm trying to do that. I can't hear you on my computer, so I'm going to go on my phone.
Okay. So, anyway, it's the next webinar has a completely separate link and you'll have to log on to that separate webinar. And if you don't know what that webinar is, I've had a lot of people asking me about doing a webinar about traveling to Africa and what it's like. If you've ever had if you've ever had it in mind to go on African safari, it'll answer a lot of your questions for that. So stay tuned for that one. Again, it's a separate link. So with that said, I'll go ahead and get started on this. More AI prompts to improve your photography. Here we go. So what we're doing today, we're going to explore a few prompts that you can use to learn about your photography and improve your post-processing skills. That's the really the purpose of today's webinar. I'll say that again. We're going to explore a few prompts that you can use to learn about your photography and improve your post-processing skills. What we're not going to do is explore how to make AI images or alter your images that may be deemed unethical. And that deemed unethical, that's a wide open phrase to use, but it's just the truth. Some people, you know, I, all these tools we use now, especially like my blog that I do, every time I do a blog entry, it's trying to get me it's trying to get me to use AI to write a blog entry and to make the pictures for that blog entry. I refuse to do that. I think I think the joy of photography is actually found in going out and making pictures. And so we're not going to talk about how to prompts that you can make more photorealistic images. All we're going to talk about is how to take the pictures that you're already taking and how to ask AI specific questions so you can improve upon that. By the way, this thing's peppered with some of my recent African pictures. I just spent the month of July. If you didn't hear me before, the month of July I was in Botswana and did back-to-back workshops there. It was just a wonderful time to be there, and a wonderful trip overall. We saw all kinds of cool stuff. So, a few tips for using AI. There are a lot of options that you can choose from, a lot of different brands. I'll go over them in a minute, but Chat GPT, Google Gemini, I think the best thing is figure out the one that works best for you, figure out the one that you can communicate with the best, and then use that one and just learn how uh, that different uh, Chat GPT system works. I know depending on what I'm wanting to do, a lot of times, just I should I should admit this because it sounds like I'm 12 years old, but a lot of times I'll make fun of my brothers and I'll use Chat GPT to make funny images of my brothers, and so I know how to describe things to Chat GPT to make it understand better. But there may be some like Microsoft Copilot that you learn how to talk to better. That's better for something like that for you. And don't take AI's word for everything it tells you. It's sometimes wrong. Oh, well, I say sometimes. It's oftentimes wrong. It'll give you some advice on what to do, like whether it's post-processing steps, and those steps are just wrong. So take it with a grain of salt. Again, the systems are getting better as time goes along. So you just use that to uh, as a guideline to help you, again, as a guideline, not as this is the Bible that you're going to follow on every single one of your images. But again, it's just a different way, a different set of eyes of looking at what you're doing and the way of thinking about the world differently. And sometimes you might need a variation of prompts to get the results that you're looking for or get the answers that you're wanting. I know I found that out a lot because as you tend to ask some of these AI systems a similar question over and over because they are constantly evolving. You start getting different answers, and sometimes those answers drift further and further from the truth. I'm working on a thing right now using Chat GPT to help me with some of it, and and it's like it hallucinates. It just comes up with crazy answers that aren't even based in reality. And so the best way to know and use AI for doing what we're talking about today is you gotta if you don't understand anything about photography at all, it's going to be limited in how much it can help you. But if you understand and you know the right answers and the wrong answers, it can be a really, really valuable tool. That wasn't Africa, by the way. Those are prairie dogs on the Badlands Strip. So AI options we talked about are Chat GPT. That's the one I use the most. I'm most familiar with that and most comfortable with that one. So that's the one I use the most. And that's the one I'm going to show you my examples on today. Google Gemini, I've used it a little bit just to try it out. I'm not crazy about Google Gemini. That's not necessarily an endorsement or a non-endorsement. It's just, it doesn't speak the same language I speak, so to speak. And then Grok is another one. Grok is the Elon Musk uh, uh, AI system. Perplexity, I got introduced to Perplexity a couple of weeks ago. In fact, one of my guests on our Botswana trip introduced me to Perplexity. Never used it before, but I've been using it a little bit, and I think for me, that's a pretty good one as well. I've had a lot of luck using it for some non-photographic related problem solving. I think I really like Perplexity. And then Microsoft Copilot. Now, that's not all the ones, but those are some of the most common ones you can find. If you decide you can get these in both free accounts as well as paid accounts. I just got a paid account to Chat GPT. It's 20 bucks a month. It's not that much money. I think I'll be able to extract the value out of that pretty easy, but it's really up to you. If you go with the free account, just know there's only so many actions it'll let you do in a particular day before it says, oh, we're going to put you in AI jail for the day, and you got to come back tomorrow when your whole account resets. So it's not unlimited. The more resource heavy queries you give these AI options, like in other words, if you tell it to create an image of my brother, I got one brother we call Bubba, create an image of my brother Bubba that looks like Bigfoot, that's a whole lot more resource intensive, and it's going to use a lot more of your tokens that you're allotted each day, as opposed to asking it a simple question like you're doing a web search or asking it, what's the temperature supposed to be like 3 days from now or something like that. So those kind of text queries use less resources they're really image heavy queries use a lot more. So just keep that in mind too as you're using these. So with that, let's go ahead and get started on all this. I'll give you a brief review of last time. So you kind of remember what we talked about. Here's a few prompts from last time that people were pretty excited about. Provide some strategies on how I can build an organizational scheme for my digital photography collection. The reason why I'm reviewing last time is if you want to, that'll save you as you're watching this from having to go back to the last one to watch that one over again. If you missed it, you can see all the things we talked about in this one. I'm not going to show you demonstrations on each one of these, but it'll still give you an idea of what we talked about last time. This is good right here. Provide some strategies on how I can build an organizational scheme for my digital photography collection. This is good if you're trying to figure out if you're like everybody else. Now, I tell people all the time, no one buys a digital camera to take fewer pictures. We all buy them to take more and more pictures. And after a while, all of those pictures become kind of a bear. And so you can use AI to help build you an organizational scheme for your digital photography collection. It'll make you a recipe book to say, do this, this, and this, and this. And that way you can organize your pictures better and it makes them easier to find in the end. You can also ask it for suggestions on, I didn't include this, but you can also ask it for suggestions on storage and how you do long-term or short-term storage and, and just really help you kind of think through the process of building an organizational scheme. My AI I used on my organizational scheme was my brain that took me forever to figure out. I say forever. When I was getting ready to switch to digital photography, the one thing that held me up was trying to think through an organizational scheme and run all the scenarios in my head to make sure that once I committed to this, it was going to be the way I organize my pictures from now on. Now that my system works for me, it may not work for everybody, but it certainly works for me. But if I'd have had AI back then, instead of spending weeks on trying to figure this out, I could have done it in just a few minutes. So uh, another thing it can do is it can recognize what's in your picture. If it's a good recognizable picture of, let's say a malachite kingfisher. That's an unusual kingfisher we saw in really colorful kingfisher that we saw in along the waterways in Botswana. If you showed it a picture of malachite kingfisher and said, make me a set of keywords based on this image that I can copy and paste into Adobe Lightroom Classic, it'll give you a set of keywords, and all you have to do is copy those keywords, paste it in onto all the images it applies to. You can do it in just a couple of keystrokes. It makes the whole keywording process so much faster than if you're just sitting there typing them in yourself. Again, these are the ones we did last time. I'm going to go slower on the new ones this month. Please provide a critique of this image based on standard photography conventions. This is a great prompt right here. This is the one I got the most feedback about. I didn't get any negative feedback. Usually if people have anything negative to say, they don't say anything at all. But the positive feedback I got was really on this one about being able to put an image, upload an image into ChatGPT and just you copy and paste this prompt into it and say, provide a critique of this image based on standard photography conventions. And it'll really give you a good, thorough breakdown about composition, about lighting, about post-processing, about all the different things that it can think of to look at that. I think that's a real good technique to use if you enter a lot of camera club competitions and you're having a hard time figuring out which picture you think is best. It'll help you kind of walk you through it. And then this is a good one too. This one, I got a lot of feedback off this one as well. Using Adobe Lightroom Classic, see how specific I am in that query. What are some specific steps I can take to process this image to make it look better? So on that one, what I did was I uploaded an unprocessed image I took in the Great Smoky Mountains. Adobe gave me, ChatGPT gave me a recipe, said do in order, said do this, give me all the steps to do. I went in and edited the picture based on what it recommended. The picture looked better. It didn't look great. To me, it was over processed and oversaturated, but it was a great, it was a great prompt to use. And it really, really did teach me a few things about Lightroom Classic that I'd never considered before. So as promised, here's a few new prompts for you as we go along. So on this part of it, I'm going to tell you some new prompts. I think I've got 5 new prompts I'm going to share with you. I'm going to show you some prompts. I'm going to tell you why I think it matters, why you should do this. So the first one is, can you compile the metadata in these images into a spreadsheet? So I'm gonna stop the share of this screen, and then I'm gonna share my computer screen. I'm gonna walk you through this, how we do this. Okay, you should be able to see that now. And the prompt was, can you compile the metadata in these images into a spreadsheet? Oop. If you were on with me last time, you knew I told you. And see, then we can add the photos and the files. Let me go to my desktop on this one. That's number one, the metadata. I'm going to pick those three files. I'm going to upload them right quick. There they go. And so when we ask it to do this, you can see this is all in real time, by the way. It's going to look into all these images and it's reading the metadata. Three different pictures, three different parts of the world. We got a monkey from Costa Rica, a rattlesnake from Redlands Ranch out in Northwest Texas, and a lion from Botswana. And it's extracting all that information out of the back end of the picture from it. And it's going to compile it all in a spreadsheet for me here in just a second. And it usually doesn't take very long at all. And I'll go ahead and give you a preview while we're waiting through this. The value of that is if you're kind of nerdy like I am, and you can start looking at your metadata in a sense of trying to figure out, uh, what lens you use the most. I mean, there's some software applications you can use that are for the Mac. I know that you can do that. Uh, called uh, oh, I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, I've done a webinar about it before, but you can use a software system that'll do the same thing. But if you don't have that available, you don't want to spend the money, and you know how to use spreadsheets, you can essentially do the same thing with your images. Upload a bunch of images from a shoot, extract the metadata, tell it to put it into a spreadsheet for you, which it just did there. You can see the image data, image underscore metadata, XLSX. Look at it in a spreadsheet, and then from there be able to make pie charts, line charts, graphs, anything else you want to be able to analyze your metadata in the end. And so you saw in just a couple of minutes, it took the metadata out of those three images. Now, if I put more images on there, it would take a little longer, but I wouldn't suggest putting, I went to Botswana and shot 90,000 images. If I was going to do this, I wouldn't put 90,000. I wouldn't upload 90,000, but I might upload a day's worth and one sample image from each subject maybe, and just kind of see if I'm using a zoom, what was the most common zoom that I use, zoom length I used, what was the most common shutter speed I used. For the people who care about that stuff, it really gives you a chance to really dig in and analyze your metadata. I know if you really kind of get to that whatever level that is, I'm not going to say it's a next level at some regard. I'm not going to say it's the top level, but for me, I've got a typo there. For me, I look at my metadata a lot to really, especially when it comes to doing photography. I don't do a lot like astrophotography, to help me study and understand why I'm doing what I'm doing and why it works and what doesn't. And so you can get the data into a spreadsheet form for further analysis. This is kind of cool too. What would this image look like if I'd shot it with a 100 mm lens instead of a 500 mm lens? Because once you take a picture and you move on with your life, it's kind of done from there. And so by using this prompt, all I'm going to do is upload another picture. Let me go into number 2, picture of a lion. And I ask the question, what would this image look like if I would have shot it with a 100 mm lens as opposed to a let's sort of see, it'll give you a breakdown. It'll give you a really thorough, thoughtful breakdown and tell you what it's going to look like. Uh, And then there, it gives you another suggestion at the end. I can also generate a realistic simulation from this exact photo. And so I can copy its suggestion there and copy it back into Chat GPT. And then it's going to make me an image to show me if I'd have shot this with a 100 mm lens, what it would have looked like. Now, let me make this clear. I'm not going to, this picture is just for my edification and uh, my education. I'm not going to use this picture. It's going to show me for anything other than just informational purposes for me. But it's going to give me a pretty good facsimile of if I'm using my Canon 1 to 500 mm zoom, what the picture would have looked like. You can see it there if I'd have shot it with a 100 mm lens as opposed to a 500 mm lens. Now the landscape looks similar to that. I mean, the overall the background was different, but again, this is just an approximation of what it can do. And uh what I wouldn't give to have had this capability a long, long time ago as I'm learning lenses, because sometimes I still feel like I make a little bit of mistake in using the wrong focal length uh, on my pictures, but that'll give you why this part matters. You can do an ongoing visualization of your images and ask various what if scenarios. You know, what if I'd have shot it with this, or what if I shot it with that? And again, in the spirit of learning, I think that's really, really valuable to understand when you've got some time to think about photography. I often tell people a lot about photography is not only out doing it, but a lot of times is also kind of thinking through these scenarios when you're back at home. You know, what lens I'm going to use if I see something like that, or what would it look like if I shot this lens, this animal at 300 mm as opposed to 500 mm. Here's the prompt the picture I should have used. I should have used the picture of a moonlit landscape, because if you shoot a picture of the moon or the sun, a sunset in anything less than 200 mm, the sun or moon starts to look like a little dot on the horizon. And so 200 mm, it looks like a natural size. And so you can do those visualizations to see what would it look like if I shot this sunset picture with a 500 mm lens or a 50 mm lens. What would the sun look like? It can give you a chance to do ongoing visualizations and ask those what if scenarios. Now, as we go through this, I really don't expect everybody to go through and use every one of these prompts. But again, these prompts are for people who are in different phases of their photography uh, learning process, and we're all in our learning process. Okay, number 3. This is kind of akin to what I did last time, but a little more deep dive. Using this original image, can you make any composition suggestions? Now, one thing I teach in some of my webinars is don't ever ask a question you don't want to hear an answer to. Uh, And so sometimes I'm bearing my soul uh, out here because it may tell me this image is terrible. Using the attached image, can you give me any advice on composition? I know that's not the exact, oh, misspelled composition. I know that that's not the exact prompt, but I think it'll get us the same answer. Again, I'm using Chat GPT for this if I didn't make myself clear in the beginning. So folder number 3, let's pick this one. Oh, this is a picture I shot in the Netherlands this past April. But let's see what it tells me. I'm not going to read all this to you word for word, but pretty much it says the low viewpoint, foreground tulips, repeating field, tree line, and sunbursts give it excellent depth. And it says what's working especially well. The large foreground tulips are important. And then where it says, and it also says the tree line is good and the sun being slightly off center works best, which that's the sun being slightly off center in that picture. That's a trick for getting rid of sunspots in your pictures. If you have it right in the middle, you're more likely to see sunspots. You always need to try to move the sun off to the edge. And then where Chat GPT thinks it could be improved, it says the biggest issue is the bottom edge. The flowers are awkwardly cropped. And they would say they'd make it a little wider, a little tighter. Uh, but anyway, it gives me, like I said, I'm not gonna go through and read all this to you, but this is just a good uh example, and it kind of sums it up here. Three very distinct layers, a hero tulip, in other words, one tulip in the foreground, or a repeating tulip field, and then trees, sun, and dramatic cloud in the end. Again, if you're taking your photography really serious, like I think everybody in this webinar is, you use prompts like this to help you understand uh, what you could do to improve it. And there's the original picture there, and they're right. Yeah, those bottom tulips right there probably are a little bit distracting. I don't know if I'd go in and get rid of them with a mask. I could have pulled a little bit wider or shot a little tighter. I think their critiques are fair. And so, yeah, I think that that solves a lot of problems there when we talk about that. So again, try that one. Try that prompt. Using this original image, could you make any composition suggestions? And then why this one matters. You can use this tool to constantly improve your composition with some common sense suggestions. And I think those are common sense suggestions. I have never claimed and will never claim to be the greatest photographer in the world. I think what I can do is good. I think from a lifetime of magazine photography, my record has kind of proved itself out that I'm at least competent enough to do that kind of photography. And I think my photography, again, it's good. Whatever claim I'm the best in the world, or the best in Texas or the best wherever, I'd never claim that. And would I claim that I know everything that I know about photography, or would I claim that to know everything there is to know about photography? I would never claim that either. So even me in my mind, I know I can use improvement. I know the my biggest impediment is if I go out and do a landscape shoot, sometimes I'll look at a landscape and it just doesn't make sense of how to compose it. And so sometimes I struggle with that. Do you go wide? Do you go more narrow? How do you do it? I struggle with that. To me, that's part of the fun too, is trying to solve those problems. I'm curious as I'm thinking through this. I wonder if it would make sense. This could be some homework for someone. If you took a cell phone picture uh, on site of a landscape shot and then uploaded it and just said, "Could you give me some compositional ideas for this scene?" I bet it would give you some good ideas on how you could compose the scene and give you an explanation. More importantly, not only show you some pictures of how it would compose it, more importantly, like all good teachers do, give you an explanation of why you should compose it that way. And that might be something interesting to look at in the future. A couple of baby lions on a zebra they've been eating on. Which of these two images do you think is better? So this is a really good prompt. Again, if you do camera club stuff and you're really interested in trying to compete well in camera club stuff and you're kind of on the fence about which pictures you think are one is better than the other, this is a great one to really consider here. And so on my demonstration, what I'm going to do is these pictures I'm going to use. Hang on, let me go to number 4. I'm going to use these two landscape pictures here. Which of these two pictures do you think are better? Is better? If you didn't hear me last time, I'm a I'm the I'm the best poor topper that I know. And what I mean by that is I never took typing in school, so I never learned how to type like the QWERTY method, I think they call it, with all your fingers. So mine's pretty much a modified two finger system that I use. And that's just how I learned to type way back in the day. And so I can type pretty good just because I practiced a lot. When I was teaching school back in Childress, the typing teacher used to give me a hard time when she would see me type, telling me how terrible of an example I was for the kids to type like that in front of them. She was giving me a hard time about it. She didn't mean it personally towards me, but I'd always remind her that, at the time I'd had 500,000 words published in magazines. And so something I'm doing is right. And so anyway, when I'm typing, I'm talking my way through it. If y'all could see my fingers while I'm typing, you'd realize how poor of a typist that I am. Which two of these pictures you think are better? So the pictures I uploaded are pictures of the racetrack playa in Death Valley on the trip we did last winter. Uh, it's going to look at them, and it says it prefers the second image of the vertical composition better. So I'll show you. I put that picture in, which is of course, a horizontal composition. And then I put that picture in, which is a vertical composition. These are the mysterious rocks that move by themselves at Racetrack Playa in Death Valley. And then it proceeds to give me uh, why it thinks the second image is more is a better picture. And then, but what the merits of the first picture is, and pretty much what it says that the merits of the first picture is the sunburst, and it has a lot more drama. And so it'll go through and it gives me an even score. It says image one, 8.5 out of a 10 for composition and storytelling. Number two, 9 out of 10. Uh, if you're, it says for choosing one for a portfolio, print, book, or photography competition, they'd submit the second image. And again, it's just it, it's one machine's opinion. You know, one thing I try to do too is get opinions of a lot of different people. You might run the same two pictures by someone else and get a whole different opinion. But I think the important thing is getting that feedback and learning through the eyes of others and what they see in a picture and what you may have overlooked. You know, we all get stuck with that old saying, you can't see the forest for the trees because you're too busy concentrating on the wrong thing. And so getting a different set of eyes to look at stuff for you is always valuable. If I'd got a different set of eyes to look at this presentation for you, I wouldn't have that topographical error that I pointed out a few minutes ago. I would have caught that the first time, but I ended up catching it the second time. So again, this prompt was pretty simple. Which of these two pictures do you think is better? And so it told me what I think is better. And again, a good recipe book, a good thought out explanation. If you do stuff like this often, it'll really help improve your photography. And so why that matters, like I said before, if you're entering pictures into a photo contest, it'll help you make decision on what's best and help you really learn based on another set of eyes what you think works best. And the best I know of, the way these AI systems work is it really combs the whole internet for all the best knowledge in the world. So I think, you know, even though it does give you wrong or crazy answers from time to time, I think for the most part, the answers are fairly accurate, what I can tell. They're fairly accurate. And again, it's not the end all be all resource. I would never recommend using AI to take the place of your brain to do all the thinking for you, but it really is a good resource, is an additional resource for you to help you think through some of these more vexing photographic matters. Of all the things we saw in Botswana last month, these little guys may have been the coolest. Little elephant shrews. They're about, I don't know, 2 or 3 inches long at the longest. And we went to a place where every evening they would come out and try to get a drink of water off the rocks. And so we were just mere feet away from them and able to get really nice shots of them like this. Those are the neatest little animals, I thought. And this is number 5. This is the last one. Act as an expert photography instructor. Look at this image and give me 3 actionable steps to make the image stand out more. Hang on, I got to look at that again. That's a long one. Act as a photography expert photography instructor. Look at this image and give me 3 actionable steps. See, there's a specific word right there. 3 actionable steps to make this image stand out more. So we'll go back to ChatGPT. Act as an expert photography instructor. Give me 3 actionable items I can do to make this image stronger. Okay. The image I chose for this one, I can't remember what it is. We'll see. Number 5. Oh, this is a composite I did of the lunar eclipse back in March here in Texas. We'll see what it says for this. I'm curious because I've looked at this picture a bunch and I can't determine whether it's I like it or I don't like it. Okay. Here's the 3 rounds. Okay, it says this is a compelling concept. The sequence of lunar phases gives the photograph a built-in visual path. That was the intent of that. And the abandoned house provides a strong terminal anchor. The biggest opportunity is to make the viewer's eye travel more deliberately between those two elements. Okay. I, I think that's all right. And so the three changes it says it would crop some of the empty space from the right. By the way the picture is presented, that's the full frame I shot that night when I shot a picture of the farmhouse. So again, what I did was I shot a picture of the farmhouse in the optimum light, and then we did a composite with the moonshots that we did the night before and added them into that shot. So the location was deliberate to get this shot, but we couldn't have made this work the way it worked with the same kind of lighting if we'd have done it when the actual eclipse happened. So that's why we made a composite of it. And then make the house a slightly stronger secondary focal point. So raise the exposure on it to make it stand out a little more, and then strengthen the relationship between the blood moon and the house. So they'd make the blood moon lead directly to the roof line or the illuminated window. And it says the third point is a big one. Bright moon, partial moon, crescent moon, blood moon. The house should be the period at the end of that sentence. Okay, that's a good one. And so that all makes sense. So again, a really thought out explanation of what it thinks I should do, and really I think it's some valuable information. And I think it's all these things. And by the way, all of these prompts that I showed you today, I hadn't run them through before to see what it would do. So I was seeing them the first time you were seeing them on what it said I should do on some of these pictures. And so I think that's again valuable information. And so why this prompt matters right there, it provides some for actionable steps for specific images in order to improve your photography. So I would challenge people listening today to go find a couple of images and just try something like that on. Just ask it, what would you do? Give me 3 things or 5 things or 1 thing or 2 things that you would do that can make this image better. And I've never taken a picture where I thought maybe a couple. I thought this is the best I can do. I can't get a better picture than this. But most pictures, yeah, there's always some room for improvement. Now, when you're dealing with stuff like wildlife and a lot of the natural world, a lot of times you can't control, the action, but it's not for lack of trying. I mean, all your pictures, I think, ought to be aspirational to the point where you can say, yeah, that's a really good picture, but I wish the bird would have been landing on this instead of just sitting there on this stick. Or I wish the clouds would have been a little bit better. And so that gives you a reason to go out and do it again and again. Hey, look, I think if we all took perfect pictures every time we went out or we thought we did the best we could do, we'd never go out again. You'd hit these locations one time and never return. I think the reason why we all go back is because we love nature photography, number one. Number two, we love seeing the natural world unfold before us. And number three, I think it's the challenge of trying to get what we consider that perfect shot. And I think all these tools, and if you take AI, again, not to replace your brain and not to replace your thinking, but if you use AI as a complement to your skills and as a complement to your learning process and as a complement as a coach for you, it really does help improve some of these vexing questions that you may have been struggling with, that you either didn't want to ask anybody or didn't want to bother asking anybody, or just didn't want to waste anybody's time. You can do it yourself in your own home. So uh anyway, at this point, I know we had a few questions pop up in the chat. I'll go back and look at those. if no one has any questions, feel free to stay in touch. I'm usually available. I say usually. Sometimes it takes me a few days to get back in touch with you because depending on where I'm at. But Russell at hackberryfarmtexas.com. You can send me an email, or you can always go to hackberryfarm.com. We've I'll tell you what, a lot of people I've seen in the audience have been with me this year. We've had a lot of great workshops, not only in the United States, but in parts of the world. I think so far this year, I've been to Netherlands, Costa Rica, Botswana. I'm going to Iceland this next week. And I think that's the end of our international trips for the year. And then we've got a great slate of trips coming up in the rest of the United States this year. Mainly we've got four in Texas and no, three in Texas, one in New Mexico, one in Tennessee, and one in Alaska. And so we're looking forward to all of those things and looking forward to the ones that join us and looking forward to our future friends that join us in the future. We've got something good going on over here. I hope you'll join us at some point. We always have a great time. And with that, I want to say thanks. And again, if you're joining me for the next webinar, uh, stay tuned. I'll be getting on in about 10 minutes for that one. Stay tuned for that one, and then I'll try to, if I made a mistake on this one on how it was presented, I'll get that worked out. It'll be right next time. So anyway, talk to you soon. If you,
Thanks, Russell.
by the way, one more note, if you haven't signed up for it and you want to, uh, go over to the Hackberry Farm website, look on the site, I think it says videos, and that at the very top, you'll give you a chance to RSVP, put in your email address, you'll get the link emailed directly to you, and you can join us for that. So